Admiral Vortalan stood at the forward ridge of the Karzan Imperium flagship Edict of Storms and watched a world burn. Ash-gray continents flashed orange like a map taking fire. Mining domes split open. Cities went dark as if a hand had pinched out their lights. His bridge crew spoke in the clipped, fearless cadence of a people who had never been taught to doubt. Planetary grid neutralized, orbital platforms silenced. Ground resistance negligible, the tactical officer reported. Vortalan's crest scales caught the cold light. Then end it. The Emperor wants this sector corrected, not counseled. They had done this for 3,000 years. Discipline, deterrence, deletion, that was the doctrine. Leave no survivors, leave no witnesses, leave only a rumor so terrible it became obedience. Beneath them anank 9 bled lines of molten glass. A murmur at sensors. Lieutenant Rex shifted in his harness, 4 hands moving with trained certainty that could not hide a tremor. Admiral reading a distortion. Forward starboard 21,000 clicks. The field signature is, name it. Not in the tables, sir. It is rhythmic, controlled, artificial. Artificial meant technology. Technology meant a flag. Vortalan had seen gravity reefs, fusion storms, void-tide cataracts. He had not seen his sensor chief go pale. Yellow alert, he said. Maintain bombardment. Prepare for contact. The distortion rippled like heat above a road. Space wrinkled and then tore, not with a bang, but with a dreadful quiet, as if the vacuum held its breath. A vessel slid out of the tier with the composure of a knife leaving a sheath. It was angular and beautiful in a way weapons should not be. No fins for show, no carved menace, only purpose. Its hull was slate, traced by faint glyph lines that moved like ink under skin. Size, Vortalan asked. Length 800 meters, mass readings, extreme, power output, Rex swallowed. Admiral, our aggregate is lower. Our fleet aggregate, Captain Hesh demanded. Yes, sir, that ship's core output exceeds our 13-ship total. The bridge went still. It is a feeling, Vortalan thought, like entering a hall and realizing the quiet you admire is not silence but listening. Contact them, he ordered. Broadcasting standard Imperial hailing codes, comms said. No reply. The stranger advanced without hurry. It wore its approach like a predator that had long ago made its peace with hunger. Arm the lattice. All ships acquire target lock. Target brackets laced around the intruder, green rings layered over its outline. The enemy made no evasive move, no shield bloom, no tell. A voice arrived instead, smooth, level, unafraid, speaking flawless trade standard with a faint Earth Coast lilt. Imperial Task Group, this is Captain Maya Rios of the Terran Commonwealth vessel Radiant Spear. You will immediately cease fire on civilian targets, power down offensive systems, and withdraw to minimum safe distance. You have 60 seconds to comply. There was a beat in which even reactor hums seemed to lean in. Vortalan's jaw flexed. The absurdity of it steadied him. Open, he said. A channel clicked, his voice filled with the weight of 1,000 enforced decrees. Unknown vessel, you are interfering with lawful Imperial correction. Withdraw or be eliminated. You have 10 seconds. The countdown lived in his bones. 10-9. On 3, his weapons officer looked up without being looked at. Vortalan nodded. Fire. 13 ships exhaled a storm. Particle lances converged into a lattice of daylight. Kinetic swarms streaked like sleet. The world lit white where beams crossed the stranger's hull. Then dimmed. Rex console flared with numbers that made no physical sense. Sir, the energy was absorbed, converted. He blinked. Their reactor just climbed. On the main screen, the Terran vessel remained where it had been, immaculate, indifferent. When its voice returned, it was colder. That was your warning shot, Admiral. This is ours. A line of white light traced from the radiant spear like a hairline crack across glass. It touched the Imperial destroyer hammer choir. There was no explosion, no dramatic fireball. The ship became a whisper of ions, then less than that. One heartbeat there, the next heartbeat a hole. Silence became a person in the room. Vortalan had commanded exterminations. He had signed orders that erased cities. He had never had his certainty amputated in one stroke. He felt the primitive animal inside his ribcage understand something his rank had never allowed. There are predators that do not roar because they do not need to. Captain Hesh recovered first. Admiral, recommend full assault formation Omega. No, Vor Talon said, and in saying it, realized fear had threaded itself through his voice. He pushed it out. We will not react like prey. Contact them again. The Terran answered at once, as if she had been waiting politely. Admiral, you will stop killing those people. You will stand down. You will live to do better. 60 seconds. He should have laughed. He found he didn't. Identify your polity, he demanded. Origin, mandate, who authorizes this interference? We are the Terran Commonwealth. Origin, Earth, Sol system. Mandate, protect life when power is abused. Authorization, elected law. That is enough. Earth, Sol. None of his charts honored those names. 30 seconds, Rios added, without malice. Vortalin looked at the burning world. It did not look back at him. It never had, and yet his hands felt heavier than armor. All ships, he said, hold fire. No one moved. That is an order. Weapons cooled. The beam lines faded from the void like nerves relaxing. Better, Captain Rios said. Admiral, we should talk. Parley, he muttered, an antique word. Over genocide. Over stopping one, she said, and over what happens after. Another tear opened behind the Terran ship, then healed. Not a ship, an exit wound from the same invisible rifle, a proof that the first had not been an accident. Rek flinched. Admiral, there are more signatures, many more. Vortalan's crest prickled. He had lived his life inside walls named Inevitable. Now, Inevitable had acquired a new accent, and it was human. They met in photons and distance. No emissaries, no ornate dais. Just two command chairs linked by a shared channel. Captain Maya Rios sat against a backdrop of systems that moved like choreography. Human officers at clean consoles. Light flowing along rails not as decoration, but as a language. Admiral Vortalin found himself studying the ordinary detail of her uniform collar, the scuff line on the edge of her armrest, the smallness of human hands that could nevertheless touch a trigger and remake an equation. Admiral, she said, you have 2 million civilians below you who will die if you resume fire. You also have a choice. Your weapon is impressive, he answered. It has not made you emperor. We don't do emperors. Her calm was infuriating. His doctrine taught him what to do with calm. Crack it. You speak our language as if it were yours. We learned it from recordings. She said, from survivors. He let the word sit. Survivors. His doctrine preferred the other kind. Here is my position, Vortalan said, careful with each word like placing mines. Imperial correction keeps the frontier stable. It prevents worse wars. We do not break law. We are the law. For 3,000 years, Maya said, your law has meant the same thing. Whoever has the fist decides who counts as a person. We disagree. Disagreement ends in defeat. Sometimes it ends in an ultimatum. She glanced aside. Transmit. Vortalan's main screen changed. It wasn't a threat display. It was a ledger, not numbers, names, worlds, operations, correctives. The dates and casualty estimates matched classified lines he had initialed. The log scrolled, and beneath each entry a thumbnail, a clipped image, a scrap of voice. The pronunciation of grief does not require translation. How, he breathed and felt the burn of anger at her, at his security directorates, at whoever had given his secrets a throat. These files are sealed at the 9th. You should update your seals, Maya said. No mockery, just tired competence. We've been here 8 years, Admiral, watching, interfering where we could without lighting a war we weren't ready to win. He studied her face and realized a thing that made his stomach tilt. She meant it about wars. She did not love them. You are not ready now, he said. You have one ship. Do we? Space answered her. Wounds opened and closed. Slate hulls arrived like lines finishing themselves. 1, then 6, then 19. Brackets bloomed across his sensor walls. TCSV Resolute, TCSV St. Elmo, TCSV Grace under fire, each with the same wrong power curve, the same impossible containment, the same indifference to intimidation. 61 in all. The cars and bridge absorbed a new kind of quiet. Admiral, Maya said, we will not fire unless fired upon. We will not destroy you if you choose to step back. And if you withdraw, we will help evacuate every civilian on that world, yours included. We will treat your wounded. We will keep our word. That is our doctrine. Mercy is weakness, Captain Hesh whispered across Vortalan's shoulder. Mercy is expensive, Maya said as if she had heard. We've budgeted for it. The insolence of the line should have made Vortalan smile. It did not. He played angles. Suppose I stall and signal for reinforcements. Your long-range lattice is already under our dampening net. We allowed your local channels because, well, talking helps. She lifted a hand. The knuckles were nicked, small human scars. We've jammed your jump locks as a safety measure, not a cage. If you choose to leave, we open the gate and you go. And if I order a full assault, then you'll force me to do the math out loud. The light changed on the Terran bridge as someone passed behind her. 61 ships. Based on our last engagement, we estimate your formation's time to mission kill at under 9 minutes. Your crew deaths would be in the tens of thousands. The civilians below would die in the crossfire. I don't want that. I don't think you want that either. He heard it then, the thing no briefing had prepared him to hear from an enemy commander, a refusal to hate him enough to make killing easy. He bared his teeth. You claim law, you claim votes, you claim a mandate to save strangers. That is not how power works. It's exactly how ours works. She leaned in as if the distance were 5 feet, not 5 light seconds. We are not here to humiliate you. We're here to stop what is happening beneath us. Stand down, let people live, then call your emperor and tell him a new set of facts exist. Vortalan looked at the planet. He thought of his academy lectures on deterrence curves and the architecture of fear. He thought of the small scar on a human hand. Open a corridor, he said. The words tasted like alloy and pride. We will withdraw to minimum safe distance. We will observe your evacuation. Copy, Aya said. Commonwealth ships maintain positions, begin humanitarian ops, medical launch. The channel held a beat as shuttle signatures multiplied like stars. Admiral. Yes, thank you, she said, and it was not a victory cry, it was relief. It sounded expensive. He killed the channel. Captain Hesh stared at him as if betrayal were a smell. Sir, with respect. With respect, Vortalan said. I will not triple my losses to prove I can double them. He turned to sensors. Maintain track. Any data you can steal, steal. Learn them, learn everything. He did not sleep during the 3 days that followed. He watched human ships lift wounded Karzans with the same care as miners. He watched Terran medics kneel to a child who could not stop shaking, hands steady, eyes steady. He watched the radiant spear hold station like a judge. When the last transport cleared and human freighters folded away, Maya Rios returned to his screen. The civilians are safe, she said. You are free to go. You could have trapped us, he said. We're not hunters, she said. We're shepherds with sharp dogs. She should not have been able to wound him with gratitude. Yet she had. Vortalan looked past her, past the disciplined human bridge, into a future where his report would be read by a man who had never learned the word enough. Then I will go, he said, and I will speak the new facts. He cut the line and tasted fear, not of their weapons, but of what choices would look like when facts refused to blink. The throne's spire in Karza Prime was a cathedral built out of victories, bones under crystal, banners sewn with maps before they were burned. Emperor Karl vast war regalia that had outlived dynasties and had never once needed to justify itself. He did not raise his voice when he spoke. The floor made everyone else lower theirs. Explain, the Emperor said. Admiral Vortalan did. He did not dramatize. He did not minimize. He spoke the numbers and the nouns and the human names. He said radiant spear out loud and felt every eye weigh it. Unknown polity, hissed High Minister Var. Impossible technology, insolent humanitarian pretext, lies, all of it. Not lies, Grand Admiral Sareth murmured, scarred hands folded. If lies, very efficient ones. Either way, reality cares less than we do about our opinion. The Emperor's eyes did not move. What do we send? Sareth did not hesitate. Everything that fits. Gather first, second, fifth, 300 plus. We go to Anank 9 and we teach these Commonwealth what scale means. There were the usual throat clears about supply lines and treaty optics and whether to use the dread platforms that everyone pretended did not exist. There were no objections that stuck. 3 hours later, a message ran down the fleet ladders and through the hearts of every officer who had learned victory the way others learn music. Assemble. In the jump wake outside Anank 9, human ships hung like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence they thought they had the right to write. The Imperials arrived with a paragraph of dreadnoughts and the grammar of overwhelming force. Sareth stood on the bridge of Crown of Auric and admired the lattice. He was a professional. He knew when a thing looked beautiful. Attack formation Gamma, he said. Target prioritization, human command hulls first. Salvo doctrine, saturate, then correct. Weapons began to sing. On the radiant spear, Captain Maya Rios stood with her palms at rest on the rail and watched the largest fleet she had ever seen align itself for murder. Her tactical officer's voice was precise and steady, like a scalpel that never learned to tremble. Imperial Count 317 plus support, dread platforms present, jammers painting our locks. Copy, Maya said. Signal the line, plan hammer, no first shots, absorb, then end it quick. The first Imperial barrage hit. It should have shredded alloys that had only met this age in suspicion. Instead, it flowed and vanished and did what physics had quietly been built to do aboard human ships. Turn hostility into heat, into current, into strength. Power climbed. Capacitors filled like lungs. Mark, Maya said. You can describe simultaneous fire. You cannot quite draw it with words. The Commonwealth line lit along its length and then outward in rings, a geometry of intent. White thread stitched through vacuum. Imperial cruisers discovered new verbs, unmake, undo, unship. The dread platform ram's devotion attempted to arm its gravitic auger and found its permissions revoked by a language it did not speak. Sareth did not curse. He adjusted. All ships, Vector Delta, close. Ram if you must, they cannot erase velocity. They erased velocity. When Crown of Auric pushed its mass toward Grace under fire, its momentum died as if a hand had pressed the universe's pause. Grace rotated gently and pushed, and a vessel that had never been moved without consenting moved. Grand Admiral, came the human voice on open channel, older than Maya's, rougher around the edges, carrying command like a carried flag. This is Admiral Rosa Torres, Terran Commonwealth First Fleet. You will power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. We will treat your wounded. No one has to die. Sareth looked at his board. Losses were a red fog. He had not worked this problem before, but he knew the cost curve and it was vertical. Admiral Torres, he said, and made the words level. You are fighting the wrong war. We do not surrender. You do when the alternative is extinction for people who didn't get to choose your uniform. You cannot occupy the Imperium. We're not here to occupy you, she said. We're here to make it expensive to keep killing civilians. His helm chief caught his eye, then looked away, and Sareth understood the most dangerous thing in war was not a weapon, it was recognition. He saw in his crew the knowledge that the choice had already been made by reality, and the only thing left was how much pride would cost. He shut his eyes, not in prayer, but in honesty. All ships, he said. It scraped his throat. Cease fire, stand down. The Commonwealth stopped killing the moment he said it. That detail would live in him. Boarding teams moved with a competence that did not confuse efficiency with cruelty. Medics in matte white went first. Marines in dark gray held their rifles like promises. In the Radiant Spear briefing room, Admiral Sareth met Admiral Torres. He was taller, she was older, neither bowed. Your Emperor will not accept this, he said. I don't require his acceptance to save a child, she said. You're naive. We're consistent. He started to answer and didn't. How many ships do you have? He asked instead. Enough, she said, and did not blink. It should have sounded like theater. It sounded like policy. Sareth returned to his ship with a set of terms and a weight that felt like a new organ. At Throne Spire, the Emperor heard the word surrender spoken about a Karzan fleet for the first time in living history. He did not rage. He did not gnash. He turned to the shadowed side of the room where the architects of unnamed projects waited for the day their diagrams would be called holy. "Activate Project Black Halo," Emperor Karl Vast said. "We end this where all pests begin, their home." Black Halo was not supposed to exist outside whispers and budget lines that lied. In the sparse belt above Karza Prime, a ship the size of a city turned on in pieces, each section a weapon someone had sworn would never be used. It did not have a proper naval designation. It had a purpose: unmake an ecosystem in one shot. "Timeline?" the Emperor asked. 6 weeks to full charge," the director said, voice careful, eyes elsewhere. 8 to flight readiness." "Make it 4, the Emperor replied, as if time itself were a subordinate. News moves in empires the way blood moves in bodies. It reaches the heart last. But the Commonwealth's networks were veins sown where Karzan eyes did not look. Within 20 hours, a secure packet landed on Admiral Rosa Torres's desk aboard TCSV Anthem, and a duplicate chimed on Captain Maya Rios's rail aboard Radiant Spear. Maya read it and did not swear. "They're going for Sol," she said. "Phase 3, Admiral." Torres tapped the table once, a habit that had replaced worse ones. "Phase 3, signal Earth Command, spin the grid, wake the reserves we promised we'd never admit we had." The message reached Geneva under a lake where a room full of practical people did what dramatists always underestimate: arithmetic. President Alina Brooks stood with her arms folded, coffee forgotten at her elbow, as orbital maps blossomed. The Sol defense architecture, ridiculed by pundits 8 budget cycles ago as paranoid, overbuilt, impossibly expensive, lit one icon at a time until the sky picture looked not like war but like infrastructure. "Will it hold?" she asked. General Venkman did not do false confidence. "It was built to hold, Madam President. And the fleets?" "Stacked," he said, using the slang that had somehow made its way into memos. "1st through 9th in reserve, expeditionary standing down from rim ops. Logistics green, civil defense blue. When they jump in, they hit a wall. When the wall sings, we show them the choir." She exhaled. "I hate that I understand military poetry now." He smiled without humor. "You hired us to be fluent." Across Commonwealth space, traffic patterns changed. Freight that had been headed out for wheat and water turned around and carried armor and medics. 1,000 small kindnesses happened in small rooms where no cameras could find them and meant everything anyway. A neighbor moved an elder to a shelter. An engineer coded an update at 3 a.m. and never told anyone. A teacher taped a paper star above a bunk and said it was the one that always finds home. In the dark, the Imperium gathered itself into something that wanted to be inevitable. 843 hulls with teeth, black halo glowing like a coal that had learned rage. Vortalan slept for the first time in days and dreamed of hands that were not Karzan or human, just hands lifting rubble from a child's legs. He woke to orders that would make him history or a caution. Proxima Rally, Hyperspace Vector Sol, do not fail. On Radiant Spear, the bridge felt different. Jokes got shorter. Rituals got simpler. People who had grown up on coasts and deserts and mountain towns looked at the blue dot in the corner of their screens, the way sailors once looked at lighthouses. Maya Rios stood in the half-light and memorized her team in movement. Tabe at comms braiding her hair with one hand while the other rode channels. Ito at tactical measuring probabilities, the way other people measure salt. Cade at helm setting fingers on throttles like a pianist easing into a minor key. "Bring me Sol's music," Maya said. On her glass, the system unfolded. 2,000 fixed defense nodes hooked to loops that bled energy back into reserves, orbital ladders with teeth, stealth girders in lag-range shadows, arrays named after trees because the engineers had a sense of humor: oak, maple, banyan, designed to drink incoming hate and give back quiet. "Commonwealth Fleet Command," Torres's voice cut over the net. "This is not a sermon, it's a checklist. Rule 1, protect civilians. Rule 2, end fights fast. Rule 3, keep the receipts. We are not doing this to impress them. We are doing this to ensure there are children to be unimpressed later." Laughter ran through 1,000 cabins and steadied 1,000 hands. At Proxima, the Imperium formed a blade and told itself that blades do not ask questions. Emperor Karl Vast stood on the Black Halo command tier and saw Saul projected at his feet like a submissive globe. Power climbed. Officers called out figures whose zeros wore capes. "Majesty," someone said softly, as if daring to wake a god. "We are ready." He raised his hand. In the cold between stars, folds opened. Mass translated. Velocity remembered itself. The Imperium arrived at the edge of the home system of a species that had refused to kneel and had the audacity to build a neighborhood watch out of physics. The first sensor officer to see the Sol grid did not have the vocabulary for O in trade standard. He made a sound anyway. "Report," the Emperor said. 2,000 no more defensive nodes, power signatures exceed everything. No human fleet detected in the inner system. "Then crush the wall," the Emperor said, mistaking sound for strength. "Make a path to their sea." He was still speaking when the grid sang, white geometry, matter bending as if gravity had been argued with and persuaded. Imperial warships learned the new verb again, un. The Black Halo's charge rose toward murder and found its permissions rewritten by a torchlight in code that had been growing in the Commonwealth for 8 years, because someone had known this day would arrive. On the radiant sphere, Maya watched icons blot out and felt the old urge to pity the people who had never bothered to imagine a door that opened in the other direction. "Hold," she said. "Wait for the second wave." On the rim of Sol, space rippled, not dozens, not hundreds, fleets. Lines arriving in stacked layers like measures in a score. First through ninth, expeditionary folding back like fists becoming palms. "Open channel," Admiral Torres said. Across every Imperial board, a human voice came through, calm, controlled, and not interested in their pride. "Imperial forces," Rosa Torres said. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. We will treat your wounded. We will keep our word. Choose now." The Emperor raised his hand in a palace where no one had ever told him no. "Fire Black Halo," he said. Systems that had been nightmares on paper tried to become history and discovered they had been placed inside someone else's story. Inside Radiant Spear, a different human voice broke in, young, quick, bright as magnesium. "Admiral Dr. Sarah Kim, civilian CTO on the line," comms said. Maya smiled despite herself. "You're late." "Traffic, Doctor," Kim said. "Also, I had to unlock a planet killer with a bad user interface. By the way, Admiral, we have control of their strategic layer. You can proceed." Maya's hands dropped back to the rail like a verdict finding its tone. "All Commonwealth commands," she said. "Execute Phase 3. Sol answered with light, and somewhere deep in the Imperium's fleet, a young officer who had memorized 100 victory hymns whispered a word he had never been taught to respect. "Enough." The first Imperial volleys broke against the Sol grid like surf against basalt. Where impact should have meant rupture, the arrays drank the violence, folded it into reservoirs, and sent the surplus into batteries named after trees. Oak glowed, maple purred, banyan reached. "Black Halo charge rising," Ito said on the radiant spear, voice clipped. "It's seeking firing permissions." "Permissions are a kind of fiction," Dr. Sarah Kim murmured on the open line, fingers moving in air above her console in Geneva. "Rewrite the fiction." Across 1,000 Imperial decks, warning runes cascaded, authority overruled, subnets went dark, fire-controlled trees forgot their roots. Subroutines woke into cages lined with questions they could not answer. The planet killer's heart climbed toward murder and plateaued as if it had suddenly remembered a promise it never made. "Black Halo is ice," Kim said, almost apologetic. "Someone put a safety on the end of the world." On Crown of Auric, Grand Admiral Sareth stared at a board that had never been allowed to speak this language. "Majesty," he breathed across to the Black Halo command spine, "we are blind where we need to be sharp." Emperor Karl Vast raised his hand anyway, the reflex of a lifetime. "Then strike with what remains." What remained was pride, momentum, and 800 ships that still knew how to be wolves. They lunged. Sol answered. Commonwealth beams did not shout, they stated. White threads stitched hulls into equations that solved to stop. Missiles learned to nap. Spinal cannons learned to pray. Boarding cutters slid between fields as if the grid itself parted for them like a curtain for medics. Hold lethal fire, Admiral Torres ordered across all human nets. We disable, we do not erase. Exceptions by necessity. Keep the receipts. Exceptions came anyway. One Imperial cruiser detonated when a panicked officer tried to hot-wire a jammed core. An interceptor clipped a defense node and was vaporized. A Commonwealth corvette took a glancing blow that sliced through compartments and left 32 families with folded flags instead of homecomings. Maya Rio stood with both hands on the rail and felt each name like a small stone placed in the mouth of a river to change its song. "Make their loss expensive," she said softly, and then louder, "Signal mercy doctrine, medics in first, Marines second, engineers third, we're not here to pose with wreckage." The grid's second movement began. Lagrange ladders bloomed open like trumpet flowers. Shuttles shot from them with the urgency of blood cells racing toward a wound. Terran Marines in slate gray moved with rifles low and intentions high. Their first acts on a dozen decks were the same. Secure the room, find the wounded, get a line to clean air. On Edict of Storms, Admiral Vor Talon watched humans carry a Karzan ensign whose blood was the wrong color for mercy. The medic's gloved hands were steady. The Marine beside her kept his rifle pointed at the floor. "This is not theater," the medic said without looking up as Vor Talon stared. "This is triage. Hold the Roman 4. He held it because he had been asked, because someone had spoken to him as if he were a person first. "Open channel," Admiral Torres said to the Imperials, her voice filling spaces where no Karzan voice had ever echoed without command. "Imperial fleet, this is your last clear chance. Power down and live. Resist and you force me to spend lives I am trying to save." Grand Admiral Sareth did not look at the Emperor's frozen image in the upper corner of his screen. He looked at the faces on his own bridge. "All ships stand down," he ordered. It tasted like iron filings and relief. Units throughout the Armada went cold. Weapons died. The feral energy in the room, the thing soldiers borrow because they must, leaked quietly into the floor. In the distance, black halos' glow faded from cold to memory. Emperor Karl Vast's voice arrived late, brittle with disbelief. "You will fight, Sareth." "We fought," Sareth said, and chose a pronoun like a knife. "Now we choose not to be erased to protect your pride." On Radiant Spear, Maya let out a breath she had held since childhood and keyed her net to wide. "Commonwealth forces maintain holds, safeties on, medics forward. Engineers start inventory. We're going to spend the next year turning swords into ambulances." Outside, Sol shone blue and ordinary for a planet that had just swallowed an empire's bite and not choked. Humanity had done what it came to do, make slaughter difficult. Now it had to do the harder thing, make peace possible. Maya watched a medic steady Vor Talon's hands and thought, "This is the picture we will need later when the shouting stops." They brought Emperor Karl Vast to Earth under a sky that had learned the weight of history and chosen not to bow. Geneva's tribunal chamber was not carved from bone or flanked by trophies. It was glass and light, and 100 translators murmuring law into ears that had only ever heard commands. Admiral Torres did not sit at the prosecutor's table. She sat behind the family's row, one hand on the railing as if to keep herself from rising every time a name was spoken. Captain Maya Rio stood when called and did what soldiers rarely like doing, placing memory on record with nouns sharp enough to draw blood. The first witness was an engineer from Anank 9, voice steady, hands trembling only when the picture of her daughter appeared on the screen. The second was a Karzan City clerk, the ridge along his crest still pink where a shock collar had been removed. He spoke slowly, stumbling over words he had never practiced. Rights, consent, personhood. The room did not rush him. The defense argued the Imperium's doctrine of correction, the language empires invent to salt over murder. It sounded threadbare in a room where evidence had the weight of names and notations. Dr. Sarah Kim took the stand to explain how Black Halo had been designed to kill a planet with a single coherent sigh. She spoke like a teacher who refuses to condescend. When it was his turn, Grand Admiral Sarath asked for no ceremony. "I commanded victories," he said, "and defeats. I know what both smell like. I am here because my emperor taught me to mistake obedience for virtue." He looked over his shoulder, not at Carl Vast, but at the gallery of Karsan officers in custody. "We can be other than what we were paid to be." The verdict was certain long before the gavel: guilty on genocide, enslavement, atrocity. The world held its breath for the punishment. History likes an easy symmetry, a throne made into a scaffold. President Alina Brooks stood and spoke with a voice that had been tempered by funerals. "We will not teach by repeating what we condemn," she said. "The guilty will not be fed to fire, they will be fed to work." Sentences were not prison bars, they were assignments. Carl Vast and his High Council would spend the rest of their natural lives under guard rebuilding the worlds they had broken. Not as masters of a new order, but as hands that lift, carry, weld, and listen. Every knowledge they had hoarded would be spilled into classrooms. Every hour would be a tithe to someone else's mourning. Some called it weakness. Others called it a revolution in the physics of consequence. After the session, a mother from Vega 7 confronted Admiral Torres in the hall. "My son died," she said, grief raw enough to scald. "Why didn't you burn them the way they burned us?" "Because I want your grandchildren to inherit something other than a torch," Torres said. The mother stared at her and then, slowly, reluctantly, nodded like someone setting down a stone after a long march. That night, Maya Rios walked along the lake and let the ordinary sounds of earth, bikes, dogs, laughter that did not flinch at shadows, resting the instrument inside her ribs. On a bench, she found Dr. Kim eating noodles with a plastic fork as if she hadn't told a planet killer to sit 2 days earlier. "You did good," Maya said. Kim slurped and shrugged. "I wrote a speech about the ethics of kill switches and threw it away. Sometimes the right argument is a working demo." Maya laughed. It came out like a cough at first and then turned into something that sounded almost like healing. "We still lost people." "I know," Kim said. "I wrote down every name. I'm going to name servers after them until we run out of racks." "Servers?" Kim grinned. "We're building something, the Lighthouse Array. A Beacons and Books project along the old Imperial routes. Libraries that can defend themselves. Clinics that can text a fleet. Places where a child can look up and know we're listening." Maya looked at the water, at stars reflected and shaken by a breeze. "We should have done that first." "We weren't invited," Kim said. "Now we invite ourselves." In cars in space, work began that did not know how to posture. Prisoners carried bricks. Former governors learned to read ledgers that balanced on something other than fear. An imperial school replaced a hall of martyrs with a workshop where children learned to make clean water and cheap light. Slogans faded. Calendars filled. Justice did not feel like thunder. It felt like mornings. Empires do not fall by verdict alone. They crumble along fault lines of hunger, memory, and men with guns who think they are alone in a room with history. In the weeks after the tribunal, the outer marches lit with independence declarations like a constellation remembering its original shapes. Some freed cities painted over imperial sigils and then looked at their former neighbors with knives still in hand. On Kel Scatter, a Vesh militia dragged Karsan families toward a quarry wall. The leader shouted the arithmetic of revenge. A Commonwealth corvette dropped from sky to stone in a vertical burn that blew dust into new weather. Marines came out with rifles and loudspeakers. "Put the guns down," a sergeant barked. "You don't get to write your freedom with somebody else's blood." "This is justice," the Vesh captain spat. "This is practice for becoming the thing you hate," the sergeant said. "It gets easier, don't let it." They disarmed the line and handed out water. They did not hand out forgiveness. That wasn't theirs to spend. In a relief depot on Rawls belt, Vortalin stacked crates, sweat gathering under a borrowed work harness. The guard assigned to him had a scar that would have been a medal in other cultures. She kept her rifle slung and her mouth mostly shut, until the third hour when a group of cars and hardliners tried to pry him away. "Admiral," their leader hissed, voice oil. "We have loyalists, ships. We can carve a path. You should be with us, not with them. We can make them respect us again." Vortalan thought of a medic adjusting in Roman 4 without checking the species attached to it. He thought of the heat of a small human hand steadying his. "I've had enough of being respected by fear," he said. The loyalists reached, fast and stupid. The guard moved faster. The floor learned a new language for compliance. When it was over, Vortalan still had the crate in his hands. "Thanks," he said awkwardly. "Hold the other side," the guard said, nodding at the pallet. It was not absolution. It was a job. Later, Maya Rios found him aligning conduit in a school being renovated from an imperial barracks. "You could have run," she said. "I could have," he admitted. "I have spent my life excusing the arithmetic of murder. It turned out I was wrong at the level of math." "Math is a good place to be wrong," Maya said. "You can show your work and then fix it." He glanced at the room, at children tracing letters onto walls where orders used to hang. "Do you believe your Federation will hold? It will fail in small ways and succeed in large ones if we keep the teeth sharp," Maya said. "We are not pacifists. We are guardians, different uniforms, same posture around kids." On Centauri Station, a referendum passed by a margin that would have started a war last year and today started a clinic. On Vega 7, the woman who had wanted a pyre for the Emperor stood on a stage and announced a voter registration drive. On Karza Prime, a parade of former officials in work grays lugged sacks of rice into a neighborhood that had learned how to mourn without singing the old songs about fire. The Commonwealth kept showing up, not like invaders, like a habit. There were ugly hours, a convoy ambushed, a vote stolen by a man with a pretty smile, a riot that melted roofing, and a rumor that almost became a graveyard. Each time the answer was the same. Show up faster, with more bandages and more body cams, with translators and maps and a willingness to pull a Marine away from a fight she wanted, because the better fight was to keep a kid from slipping on wet stairs. Admiral Torres kept a wall in her office covered in Polaroids, a rebuilt bridge, a ceasefire line turned into a marketplace, a Karzan and a Vesh arguing about soccer instead of sovereignty. She called it the boredom wall. When peace gets boring, she told visitors, we're winning. One evening, Maya stood with Dr. Kim on a catwalk above Lighthouse 3, watching the shelves fill with books and medkits and school tablets. We can't be everywhere, Maya said. We won't have to, Kim replied. She pointed at the beacons pulsing along an old imperial lane. We're building places that teach people how to be their own cavalry. Vortalan arrived with a box of language primers tucked under one arm. He hesitated, then set it down in the children's aisle. You'll be remembered, Maya said. He shook his head. I hope they remember the water and the lights. Let my name be a footnote in a chapter about plumbing. They called the new thing the Galactic Federation because the page needed a title, and the lawyers needed a term that wouldn't scare farmers. It wasn't an empire with the serial numbers filed off. It was a bargain you had to renew by showing up. Protection traded for transparency, trade traded for schools, pride traded for mornings that didn't smell like smoke. The first assembly met over the Pacific in a ring station that looked like a wedding band with too many diamonds. Delegates arrived by freighter and shuttle, and sometimes by walking across the room from a maintenance bay where they had been fixing a water main, because democracy is just as much a pipe as an ideal. The cars and seats were not at the back. They were not gilded either. They were chairs. President Alina Brooks opened with a story about a town that had once put out fires by forming a bucket line. No one asked who owned the house. They passed the bucket. We are here to pass buckets faster. Admiral Torres kept to the edges, happier near maps than microphones. Maya Rios sat where she could see both the floor and the big window where Earth threw light into space. Doctor. Sarah Kim passed a data pad up and down the row like a contraband snack. On it, a map pulsed, lighthouses standing where darkness used to be rented out by men with guns. The agenda wasn't glamorous. Elections logistics, sewage and satellites, piracy interdiction, curriculum for history classes that didn't lie. At one point, a delegate from a world nobody had bothered to name under the Imperium asked how to rebuild her library without getting robbed by the contractor. The room took the question seriously. It felt like a revolution dressed as customer service. There were dissenters. A coalition wanted the Emperor dead. Another wanted the Commonwealth to leave their orbit this afternoon and also stay forever. A man with a clean jawline and a dirty ledger tried to filibuster universal asylum guidelines with a speech about tradition. He ended up volunteering to chair the housing committee after 3 translators and a grandmother from Altai Rim asked him plainly whether he planned to keep children outside in the rain. Outside the ring, fleets drilled. Guardianship doesn't retire because the news cycle got tired. Patrols ran along old slave routes, now trade lanes with teeth. Commonwealth ships folded in and out of lighthouse systems like neighbors who know how to knock. The boredom wall grew, more Polaroids, more small winds stapled next to each other until they formed something bigger than any battle map. Cost never stopped costing. A memorial in Arlington grew a new wing with names from the Sol Defense, from Kell Scatter and Rawls Belt, from clinics where medics caught fevers they chose not to run away from. The wall was quiet. It did not advertise itself. People touched it anyway and left streaks of warmth that cooled slowly. Vortalin taught a class in a school built in what used to be an imperial tax office. The lesson was plumbing. He wore a soft shirt that had never known a parade. On the board he wrote the word siphon and drew arrows until a room full of children could make water go where it should. When he looked up, a girl was watching him with the expression of someone weighing a story and deciding where to shelve it. "What's your name?" he asked. "Leah," she said. "What do you want to be?" "Taller," she said gravely, and then an engineer. "Good," he said. "We need engineers." That evening, Radiant Spear floated above a world that was learning to argue with ballots. Maya Rios walked the quiet deck and let her hand trail along the rail. Comms pinged once. "Unknown narrowband," Tabe reported. "Origin beyond the rim. Old Imperium chart lists the sector as debris and myths." "Read it." A voice came through, thin, warbling from distance and bad equipment. It was not Karzan or Vesh or any tongue in the Tribunal's catalog, but sorrow translates. So does courage. To anyone listening, not a request for conquest, just a request. We have a hospital with no power. We have a school with no books. We have a sky with teeth. If there is a place where ships come when children cry, please teach us how to call. The bridge went very still, the way a room goes still when a newborn breathes. Maya looked at the window at the blue planet that had learned to be a promise. "Set course," she said. "Alone?" Ito asked. "Never." She said, "Signal the line, wake a lighthouse. Tell Admiral Torres I stole her best Marines. Dr. Kim gets my bandwidth and Tabe." "Ma'am." "Draft a message to the Federation Assembly," Maya said. "Subject line, we've been invited." Engines woke like good dogs. The ship turned its nose toward stories no one had gotten around to telling yet. Behind it, beacons lit along the lanes like porch lights turning on when someone gets home late. Strength, in the end, kept its oath. Protect first, then teach. And if the galaxy's worst nightmare ever came back with new teeth, it would find something it had not learned to fear yet. A community with a memory, a wall that could sing, and 1,000 hands already lifting the next bucket.